In today's video, we're reviewing the Sigma 10 to 18mm f2.8 contemporary lens, so let's get right to it. What's up everyone, Pete Coco here. Thank you as always for joining me. I'd like to thank Sigma for sending me the new 10 to 18mm to review, and I will also have my print review up on f-stoppers soon, so make sure you hit up f-stoppers for that as well. I'd also like to thank my new partner, Mint Mobile, but more on them later. And if you need any camera gear, you got to go to B&H Photo, the best camera store in the world. So I have all of these products that I talk about linked in the description below. Now I did something a little different for this review, and I recorded my first impressions of the build quality and the handling of the lens the day I got it. So we're going to go back in time and I'm going to show you the first day I got it, just threw it on the camera and talked about it a little bit. So let's check that out, and then we'll go back to the future and talk about other stuff. Now, the first thing you're going to notice about this lens is it's tiny. I mean, check this out. Look at that. It's so tiny. It's precious. It's so tiny. So this is a 2.8 constant aperture, wide angle 10 to 18 millimeters, which is pretty incredible that they can fit it in such a small package. So that's the first thing you're going to notice. And I guarantee you that if you're a Fujifilm user and you have one of the X series cameras, especially one of the smaller and lighter cameras, you're going to fall in love with the size of this right away. I know that I put it right on the camera. I was like, this is great. And this is a feature of all of the the Sigma contemporary lenses. They're small and compact. Let's talk about some of the features here. It has a zoom ring at front, and it is an external zoom, but it doesn't go out very far. It's just a small extension of the barrel. One thing you should know is that it extends all the way at 10 millimeters. So you have to, when you take it out, one thing that's a little strange is you have to extend it to go to the wide angle. So here's 10 millimeters and there's 18 millimeters. Not a big deal, but just something you should know. And then it has a manual focus ring behind it. These lenses, the contemporary line of lenses, have a metal mount and a gasket. So it does have a gasket, but it doesn't have any other kind of internal weather sealing. So just keep that in mind. The only sealing is around the lens barrel. And so it could take some weather, but I wouldn't go out in a torrential downpour. I mean, I wouldn't do that with an XT5 either, but just keep that in mind. That is not gasketed throughout. It feels very much like the other contemporary lens lines, and as it should, because it's the same line. But this one does feel a little bit more plastic in the construction. I know some of those lenses that I've tested, and I believe I've tested all of them at this point, have a metal zoom barrel or focus barrel. This one is a little bit more plastic feeling, so just keep that in mind. It does not feel cheap, however. It does have that nice, solid, well-made feel that all the contemporary lenses have. And the one critique I have, and I've had this, well, two critiques with all of the contemporary line. Number one, the manual focus ring, for those of you who want to do a lot of manual focusing, it's very narrow. And it's not finicky, but if you have, I don't have large hands, but even for my hands, it feels a little narrow to just grab it on the fly. I wish it would be a little bit thicker. I think it would be easier to use. Not a big deal, not a deal breaker. And the zoom barrel and the zoom ring does feel great. It's still kind of narrow, but it's large enough that it's easy to find. But the real thing you should remember, and that for some reason I kept forgetting to say in my reviews, is no aperture ring. So for you Fuji purists who want a physical aperture dial, unfortunately, the contemporary lenses don't have that, so you're going to have to look elsewhere. For me personally, I mean, I go back and forth with the dials. It's this using the front and the rear command dials for aperture and shutter speed, or this and that. I don't know, like, it used to be a big deal for me, but the more I shoot with these cameras, it takes me a minute to adjust, and then I'm fine. And honestly, if you're going fast, the front and rear command dials are usually easier, at least for me, than fiddling with this. Because the other thing to remember is that the shutter speed dial, it moves in full stop, so you can't have those third of a stop increments. Anyway, you all know all of that if you're a Fujifilm user, but that's what you should keep in mind. Now, I think that, here's the thing. The price, again, of all these lenses is really great. I mean, Sigma's cranking out these great lenses at very, very reasonable prices. $5.99 for this right now at B&H, which is where you should buy all your camera gear. B&H Photo in New York, greatest camera store in the world. Now, don't make any judgments yet because we haven't seen the photos yet. But if the other Sigma contemporary lenses are an indication, it's probably going to be very good, but I'm going to go take it out, shoot a bunch of pictures with it, and then we'll look at them together, and we'll continue our review. So I'll see you after I do that. Peace. Hey everyone, I wanted to interrupt this video to share that I am now a Mint Mobile partner. Mint Mobile is the wireless company that's owned by actor Ryan Reynolds. And Mint contacted me a few months back, and they asked me to try out their service. Now, as I had already been thinking of switching from my old overpriced carrier for a very long time, I was really glad to give it a try. And I was also a little apprehensive as to whether it would work well. So after 2 months of use, however, including a road trip to Tennessee from New York and multiple trips around New York and New Jersey for photo shoots, I'm here to tell you that Mint has been awesome. It only takes 15 minutes to switch, and you can keep your existing phone number and your existing phone. And the best part for me is that now I'm saving a ton of money each month, which I can spend on camera gear, and I didn't even need to sign a contract or purchase a new phone. So if you want to finally be free from your overpriced cell phone plan, click on the link in the description below and switch to Mint Mobile. Okay, so here we are back in the future. I've had the lens for about 2 weeks now. I've been shooting with it. Overall, the lens is a nice quality. It has a great feel, and I used it a number of times, and I really like the image quality and pretty much everything about it. But let's dive into that. First, let's talk about autofocus. Now, the autofocus with this lens, as with all of the contemporary lenses, is very fast and it's completely quiet. I found that whatever I photographed, the lens didn't have any trouble locking on. Even in direct sunlight, it was pretty good. And it didn't hunt for faces like some lenses do. And I didn't get a lot of false positives regarding the eye focus. So I would say this is an excellent lens, definitely on par with the other Sigma contemporary lenses when it comes to the autofocus speed and accuracy. Now for video, I also found it to be very accurate. I did some video work. I'm going to show you a little clip I did vlogging style, because this lens is an excellent vlogging choice because it's quiet and because it's so wide and because it's so light. You barely feel it on the camera like the X-T5. It's super light, so it really is a nice fit. And even on the X-T4, which is a little bit heavier, it wasn't so bad having it on the selfie stick and walking around with it. One thing I will say is there is some noticeable focus breathing when you're at 10 millimeters, but nothing major that I would say is a deal breaker. Even with the X-T4, which is not Fuji's best autofocus camera, it did a pretty good job when I did a fast zoom from the wider to the more telephoto end of the lens. It hunted a little bit at certain points, but overall it did a good job. And then there was a point when I did my little vlogging clip that it didn't catch my face, but that was because I had it set to the focus point in the middle, and I think it just missed my face. That was more a setting error than the lens. So I would say good job, Sigma, another lens with very good autofocus capability. Now let's talk about image quality, which is the big question for this particular lens. Now, one of the places I took this lens was to a local museum with my son. We went to the Garvey's Point Museum, which is out on Long Island. Now, this is a great choice for something like a museum visit because it's a wide angle, so you can get a lot in the view, and it's fast. The f2.8 really does make a big difference because if you're in a poorly lit museum with exhibits and stuff where there's not a lot of light, you don't have to bump the ISO up to crazy levels to get some cool shots. So let's take a look at some of the photos I got. So here's my son. During the day, we attended a pottery making class. We learned how to make some cups or something. And this is the before image. And the colors and the tones are pretty good right out of the gate. Now, this was under nasty yellow fluorescent lighting. So the colors are not great out of the gate, but I used one of my favorite sims, the classic chrome film sim, and I got some awesome results. And I like to take portraits with wide-angle lenses. You can get some cool effects and do some fun things with them. So here, of course, his hand is huge and towards the camera because of the wide angle. That's before. Here's the after. And I was able to dial out some of the yellow from the fluorescent lights, no problem. Here's his little lump of clay. And you could see that this lens also gives you a very nice, pleasing bokeh. It's not weird. There's no weird stuff happening back there. And you can get a pretty shallow depth of field with it. And it has good close focusing. So within a few inches, you could see I was right up on top of this lump of clay. And here again is the before. So I just used the classic chrome and dialed it up a bit. Then we went outside. There was a bonfire where they were cooking food on an open fire, and a campfire, I should say, not a bonfire. And I got some cool shots here too. And I really do like the color rendition, the contrast of this lens. It's excellent. Now, I edited this. You can see my editing here if you're interested, where I really bumped up the contrast. I wanted to give it sort of that really contrasty, deep shadow look. But it's sharp. Everything looks nice, and you can see we have some squash, and we're eating some fish off the fire. I'll show you the before here. Before, it looks good too, color-wise. It just was not popping enough for me, so I did that with it. Then, shooting into direct sunlight, you can see you do get some flare, but it's pretty well controlled. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but literally I was shooting to the direct sun, peeking behind the building, and I still was able to pull out a lot of that detail. Like, check it out beforehand. And I really was able to pump up the detail and get a lot of what I missed there. So I think it did a pretty admirable job shooting right into the sun, if that's your thing. One of the coolest parts of the museum visit is we went inside and there was a Native American chief speaking, and I got some cool images here where I was able to really utilize that wide angle lens and get a cool scene and have him in the center there. And the lighting in here was terrible, of course, but at f2.8, I was able to shoot at ISO 400. So this is where a lens like this can come in very handy for this kind of shooting, or if you're doing any kind of like street shooting, or if you're on vacation, or if you're, say you're in an old cathedral, which I did some cathedral outdoor shots, I'll show you in a second, but inside, you don't have to use an incredibly high ISO to get the results you want when you're shooting at 2.8. Here's one that I applied one of my favorite sims, Acros. So here's the before. And again, here I was shooting at ISO 800. So I really like the fact that I didn't have to pump up the ISO to a crazy high level indoors without good lighting, because he only had some of those lights above him. And I did like the way it made these cool shadows behind him. And then we went to a local cathedral. We didn't go inside, but we did some outdoor shots. Outside on a nice day like this, the color and the contrast is very good. I really like the colors of this lens, and I honestly found it to be a little bit more similar to some of my Fuji lenses than even some of the other Sigma lenses, which I found to be a little bit more on the cool side, which was interesting to me. So here's a local cathedral, and what I did here was... I don't know what I did. Well, I just brought out the detail a little bit. Didn't do much, but there you have it. Now, one thing to keep in mind with a lens like this is obviously you're going to get a lot of vignetting. So I'll show you, like on this shot, you can see in the corners there's a lot of vignetting you're going to see. But if you don't like that, it's really not that hard to just dial it out. So like here, I dialed it out. It's much more evenly lit across the frame now. Sometimes I don't mind the vignetting. It depends what I'm photographing. But if that's a concern, that's an easy fix in post. And you're going to get that with pretty much every wide-angle lens to one degree or another. But again, there's a lot of detail. And this is right out of the camera. Here I just bumped it up a notch in Capture 1. And it's got a lot of crispness to it. I like it. Now here, I brought back some of the highlight areas, so I was able to get a little bit more blue out of the sky. And that's one thing that I like. Here's another one where you can see shooting right into the sun. It was a little hazy this day, so the sun wasn't quite as bright, but it's very well controlled. So again, for shooting into the sun, you're going to get a lot of control. One thing that I did like about this, especially with the X-T5, is remember that you can pull out a lot of detail in the shadows and the highlights. See that? So I was able to retain a lot of detail. Here's another one. And if you zoom in, if we want to pixel peep a little bit, but we're going to do some more of that soon, you can see it's very sharp. And this again is at 2.8. at 10 millimeters, which was the way I liked using it the best. And the thing here too, you can see I fixed the vignetting in the after. See, the edges are much brighter. And I was able to pull the highlights out so I could really get the shape of the sun. And you can see the sunbeams much better here. Color is excellent. I like the color. Here's one I did in black and white. Lots of detail. There's really a lot to love here. And the wide angle lens is cool, obviously, for effects. Now, the other thing I did is, which we're going to look at now, is I went back to my studio and I did some pixel peeping, some charts. And here's where I'll give you the real sort of, we're going to get a little bit more definitive about what we're talking about here. So this is all at 18 millimeter. If we zoom in, you can see right on the top left is 2.8, top right is 5.6, bottom is f11. So at 2.8, you can see it's not the sharpest in the center. At 18 millimeters, you can see it definitely gets much better at 5.6. It's best at 5.6, and then it's okay back at f11 too. And on each, you can see there is definitely some color fringing going on. So that's in the center. At the corners, same thing at 2.8. It's definitely not as sharp as at 5.6 or as at f11. So 18 millimeters, 2.8, it leaves a little bit of the sharpness on the table there. So that's something to keep in mind. 5.6 is going to look the best. However, when we go to 10 millimeters and we do the same thing, we're going to look at these at 10 millimeters. You're going to see that at 2.8, it's much sharper in the center. And at 5.6, it's sharp. And at f11, 10 millimeters, it starts to lose a little bit, but it's still acceptable. And like we're way zoomed in here. There is still some noticeable color fringing. And then at the corners, you're going to see, again, 5.6 is where it's doing its best job. It's still not in focus. It's not sharp. And again, it's not sharp at 2.8 on the corners. And you can see some of the vignetting there as well. So there you have it. Now, so when we're pixel peeping, yeah, you're going to see that at the best this lens will be is 2.8. If you want to shoot 2.8, 10 millimeters will give you the best center sharpness. 5.6 is 2.8. You're good to go pretty much across the range. But at 18 millimeters, 2.8, that was where it was the least crisp in the center and at the corner. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, this is pixel peeping, and we're getting really close here, but it's food for thought for you. However, in real world use, I didn't really find anything where I felt like the lens doesn't look sharp. Like as the images I showed you, I was happy with the sharpness, and overall I think it's does an admirable job. The color, the detail, everything. But for what it's worth, there you go. There's your pixel peeping. All right, so there you have it. So let's wrap this up. Now, one thing that I know people are going to ask me in the comments, how does it compare to the Tamron 11 to 20? Well, I would say that image quality-wise, you're going to get probably a little bit better sharpness out of the Tamron. However, keep in mind that the Tamron is going to be like double the price. It's much more expensive. Build quality, I don't know, they seem pretty similar to me in that respect, so keep that in mind too. If you're looking for something in this price range, this is $599 right now. You can get it at B&H. So go get it from B&H if you're going to buy one. Use my link if you don't mind below. But it's a great deal at $599. You're really getting a lot for your money. So I don't think this is their best lens when it comes to the overall image quality. But for a wide angle zoom, that's fast, that gives you a lot to love at a very, very good price, this is still another great offering from Sigma. Okay, so that's all that I have for you today. Hope you enjoyed this review, and I would once again ask that you'd subscribe to the channel, share this video, hit that like button, leave me a comment below. I appreciate all of your subscriptions, and they help me to continue growing this channel and providing you even better content as I go. Definitely check out this lens from my friends at B&H Photo. They've been an awesome partner to me. Even when my channel was really small, they supported me and they'll send me gear to review. Unfortunately, I have to send it back, but they let me hold on to it for a while to test it out. And they've been really kind to me. So I would appreciate if you check their store out if you're going to buy one of the items that I've talked about. Mint Mobile is awesome. Definitely check them out as well. I've got a link in the description below. And here's wishing you an awesome day, my friends. Go out and take some cool pictures, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.